I'm David Mitchell. Everyone calls me Ranger Dave. I've been wearing the National Park Service uniform for over 22 years, and for the last 15 years I've been working in Glacier National Park in northern Montana. I've rescued hikers suffering from hypothermia on the Highline Trail, tracked grizzly bears in the wilderness, and had the chance to witness countless sunrises from the Going to the Sun Road. But what I'm about to tell you isn't in any ranger training manual, and it's not something we share with the tourists who flood this place every summer. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Your support is very important to us. There's a 12-mile stretch of the Continental Divide Trail that we removed from all maps in 1987. If you look at current trail guides, you'll see the route makes an odd detour around Triple Divide Peak, adding unnecessary miles and elevation gain. The official explanation is geological instability. The real reason is much worse and much stranger. It started for me on March 15, 2008. Late season avalanche, Massive 1, came down near Ptarmigan Tunnel. For those who don't know, Ptarmigan Tunnel is a 250-foot bore carved straight through the mountain by civilian Conservation Corps workers in the 1930s. It connects the Many Glacier Valley with the Belly River Valley, and during summer, it's a popular hiking destination. But in March, it's buried under 30 feet of snow and ice. I was leading the avalanche assessment team. Standard protocol after a big slide. Check for structural damage, assess future risk, make sure no winter campers got caught. What we found changed everything. I thought I knew about these mountains. The avalanche had exposed something. At first, we thought it was just exposed rock face, maybe some mineral deposits creating an optical illusion. But as we got closer, we realized we were looking at a trail, a perfectly maintained trail that shouldn't exist, carved into the cliff face about 40 feet above the known path. My partner that day was Tom Crow Feather, a Blackfeet tribal member who'd been ranging almost as long as me. His family had been in these mountains since before recorded history. When he saw that trail, he went pale under his weathered tan. "We need to leave," he said quietly. "Now." "Tom, what is—" "My grandmother told me about this. The ghost trail. It only appears when the mountain bleeds white, during avalanches. Anyone who walks it doesn't come back the same. Sometimes they don't come back at all. I should have listened. God help me. I should have listened to Tom. But I was curious, and I was stupid. And I had all the arrogance of someone who thought 15 years of experience meant I understood these mountains. I radioed back to headquarters, reported the exposed trail as a geological anomaly requiring further investigation, and geared up to climb. Tom refused to come. He waited at the bottom, told me I had 1 hour before he was calling in a full emergency evacuation. Looking back, he was being generous. He should have called it in immediately. The climb to the trail was treacherous. The avalanche had left the cliff face unstable, and every handhold felt like it might give way. But after 20 minutes of careful climbing, I pulled myself onto the mysterious path. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Complete, absolute silence. No wind, no distant bird calls, not even the sound of my own breathing. It was as if someone had pressed mute on the entire world. The second thing I noticed was the trail itself. It was made of stone I didn't recognize, smooth, almost glass-like, with veins of something that looked like gold but seemed to pulse with its own light. The path was exactly 6 feet wide, carved with precision that would be impressive today, let alone whenever this was actually made. I followed it for about 100 yards, my radio crackling with increasingly frantic calls from Tom that I could barely hear through growing static. Then I reached the impossible part. The trail led directly into Ptarmigan Tunnel. Not near it, not around it, into it. But not the Ptarmigan Tunnel I knew. This entrance was wrong. The tunnel I knew was rectangular, reinforced with timber and stone. This was a perfect arch, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly, geometric patterns that seemed to shift when I wasn't focusing on them. Above the entrance, carved in English so fresh it looked like it had been done yesterday, were the words, "Tunnel completed, 1933, 1987, 2021, always." I stood there, trying to process what I was seeing. Those dates. 1933 was when the CCC built the original tunnel. 1987 was when we removed this section from the maps. 2021 was still 13 years in the future. And always. I took photos with my digital camera, lots of them. When I checked the display, every image showed something different. In one, the tunnel entrance was blocked by solid stone. In another, it was a gaping void. In yet another, I could see through to the other side, but the landscape beyond wasn't the Belly River Valley. It was an ocean. Impossible since we're 1,000 miles from the nearest sea. That's when I heard the footsteps. They came from inside the tunnel, steady and rhythmic. Multiple sets, like a group of hikers approaching. But the sound was wrong. Too regular, too synchronized, like marching. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there? This is Ranger Mitchell with the Park Service." The footsteps stopped immediately. Then, after a silence that felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, a voice replied. It was a man's voice, speaking English with an accent I couldn't place. Old-fashioned, like something from a 1940s radio show. "Ranger Mitchell? But you're not supposed to be here until next week." "I'm sorry," I called back. "Who is this?" "Are you in distress?" "Distress?" The voice laughed, but it was bitter. "Son, we've been in distress since 1933. We're the CCC crew that built this tunnel, all 12 of us. We finished our shift, walked through to celebrate, and, well, we never made it to the other side. Not in the right year, anyway." My blood went cold. "That's not possible. 1933 was 75 years ago." 75 years. 200 years. -30 years. Time doesn't mean much in here. The tunnel doesn't just go through the mountain, Ranger. It goes through everything. Past, future, sideways into worlds that never were. We've seen it all. We've seen you. Seen me? March 15th, 2008. March 15th, 1933. March 15th, 2089. You're here for all of them, Ranger Mitchell. You're always here, finding the trail, having this conversation. It's like a broken record, except the record is time itself, and the needle is this cursed tunnel. I took a step backward, my hand going to my radio. Through the static, I could barely hear Tom shouting something about emergency response, about my 1 hour being up. "Don't go yet," the voice said, and now it was pleading. "Please, we've been trying to warn someone for so long. The tunnel, it's not just a passage, it's a wound. The mountain's been bleeding time ever since we broke through. That's why the animals avoid this area. That's why the Blackfeet have legends about this place. That's why—" The voice cut off as suddenly as it had started. The footsteps resumed, but now they were running. Running toward me. I could see shadows moving in the tunnel's darkness, growing larger, and every instinct I had screamed at me to flee. I ran back along that impossible trail as fast as I dared, the silence broken now by something worse, the sound of 1933 bleeding into 2008, decades colliding with a noise like reality tearing. Behind me, I heard voices shouting in languages that weren't quite English, weren't quite anything I recognized. The climb down was a barely controlled fall. I hit the snow hard, Tom catching me as I tumbled the last few feet. He took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just dragged me toward the snowmobiles. As we rode away, I looked back once. The trail was gone. The cliff face showed nothing but bare rock and ice, as if the path had never existed. But my camera still had the photos. When we got back to headquarters, I tried to show them to my supervisor. The memory card was corrupted. Every single image was gone, replaced by static that looked almost like those shifting symbols above the tunnel entrance. Tom never asked me what I saw up there. He didn't need to. That night, he brought me to his grandmother's house on the Blackfeet Reservation. Mary Crow Feather was 93 years old, blind in one eye, and knew more about Glacier's real history than any book ever written. "You found the ghost trail," she said. It wasn't a question. My grandfather found it too in 1891, before this was even a park. He spent 3 days on that trail. When he came back, he said he'd lived 3 lifetimes, died 3 deaths, and seen the mountain's true face. "What is it?" I asked. "What's that tunnel?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her tea like it held answers. "The backbone of the world. That's what we call this place. But backbones can break, and when they do, everything else breaks with them. That tunnel isn't just through rock. It's through the spine of existence itself. The men who built it didn't know what they were doing. They thought they were just cutting stone. But some places, the barrier between what is and what isn't is thinner. They punched a hole through one of those places. The voices said they were the CCC crew, trapped since 1933. Mary nodded slowly. Trapped is one word for it. Another would be scattered. Pieces of them in everywhere the tunnel touches. They're not ghosts, Ranger Mitchell. They're still alive, still dying, still building that tunnel, all at the same time. How do we help them? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Help them? Child, we can barely help ourselves. The Park Service removed that trail from the maps in 1987 because 9 hikers went in and 12 came out. I frowned. 12? But if 9 went in, the 3 extra? They were from 1962, a geology team that had disappeared 25 years earlier. They walked out of that tunnel in 1987, hadn't aged a day, and had no memory of the missing decades. The Park Service hushed it up, created new identities for them, and struck that section from every map, guide, and database. She leaned forward, her one good eye fixing on me with an intensity that was almost physical. But the trail doesn't care about our maps. It appears when it wants to appear. During avalanches, yes, but also during certain celestial alignments during the spring melt when the water runs backwards up the mountain, and sometimes for no reason at all except that the mountain is restless. There has to be something we can do. There is, she said. Stay away. Keep others away. And pray that the wound doesn't get any bigger. But even as she said it, we both knew it was already too late. I'd walked the ghost trail. I'd heard the voices from 1933, and somewhere, in my bones, I could feel the mountain watching me, waiting for me to return. Because the voice in the tunnel had been right about one thing. I was always there. Past, present, future. The trail had marked me, and sooner or later, I'd walk it again. That night, I dreamed of the tunnel, but in my dream, I didn't run. I walked through, emerged on the other side, and found myself in Glacier National Park. But not the one I knew. This glacier had no roads, no trails, no human presence at all. Just pristine wilderness stretching to horizons that didn't match any map. And in the distance, walking along a ridge that shouldn't exist, I saw 12 figures in 1930s CCC uniforms, building a trail that led nowhere and everywhere forever and never, in a loop that had no beginning and no end. When I woke up, there was stone dust on my boots, the same strange, glass-like stone the ghost trail had been made of. I've carried that dust with me ever since. A reminder, a warning. A promise that someday, somehow I'll have to go back. The mountain is patient, it can wait, but lately the dreams have been getting stronger. And last week Tom's grandmother called me with news that made my blood run cold. It's appearing more often, she said, not just during avalanches anymore. People are seeing it in broad daylight. Summer tourists are finding it, and David, some of them aren't coming back. She paused, and I could hear the weight of decades in her voice. I think the wound is getting bigger. The first tourist disappeared on July 4th, 2008, Independence Day. The park was packed with visitors, over 30,000 of them crawling over every accessible trail and viewpoint. Emma Brown, a graduate student from Berkeley studying glaciology, had been camping near Grinnell Glacier when she vanished. Her tent was still there, her equipment untouched. Her data logger showed normal readings until 3:33 a.m., when it recorded temperatures that shouldn't be possible. Absolute zero for exactly 1 second, then 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit the next, then back to the normal 45 degrees of a mountain summer night. I was part of the search team, but I already knew where she'd gone. The ghost trail had taken her. We found her 3 days later. She was sitting on a rock near Swift Current Lake, perfectly still, staring at something none of us could see. When the medical team approached her, she didn't respond to her name. She only responded to Elizabeth. Elizabeth Carver, she said in a voice that wasn't quite her own. CCC Women's Corps, July 4th, 1933. We were celebrating the tunnel completion when the mountain sang. The medical team sedated her, evacuated her to Kalispell Regional Medical Center. The official report blamed altitude sickness and dehydration. But I knew better. Emma Brown had walked the ghost trail, and Elizabeth Carver had walked back. Tom Crowfeather and I started keeping an unofficial record. Every disappearance, every strange sighting, every time someone reported seeing a trail that wasn't on their map. The pattern was accelerating. What had been once every few years was now happening monthly, sometimes weekly. The park superintendent, Janet Morrison, called me into her office in mid-August. She was a career NPS official, tough as nails, had run Yellowstone's law enforcement before coming to Glacier. She had a file on her desk that I recognized, my reports about the ghost trail. "Dave," she said, not looking up from the papers, "I've been reviewing your unusual incident reports." "Superintendent, I know how they sound, but no, Dave, I don't think you do." She looked up then, and I saw something in her eyes I didn't expect. Fear. I've been in the Park Service for 32 years. I've seen the files most people don't even know exist. Yellowstone has its own problems, places where the geothermal features do things that violate thermodynamics. Grand Canyon has spots where sound travels backward in time, and Glacier. She pulled out a folder marked with classification stamps I didn't recognize. Not just confidential or secret, but something in symbols that hurt to look at, just like the markings above the tunnel. In 1967, she continued, there was an incident. A full Boy Scout troop, 14 kids, and 3 adult leaders entered Ptarmigan Tunnel from the Many Glacier side. 19 people came out the Belly River side. The 2 extra? They were scouts from a troop that had disappeared in 1942. They thought World War II was still happening. They had newspapers in their packs from 1942, fresh as the day they were printed. What happened to them? Black helicopters. Men with no insignia. The boys were never seen again, and the leaders were convinced they'd had a mass hallucination. But one of those leaders was my father. I stared at her. Your father he never forgot. He spent the rest of his life researching what he called temporal anomalies in the national parks. When he died, he left me his research. She pushed the folder toward me. This goes back to when Glacier was established in 1910. Hell, it goes back to when Lewis and Clark passed through the region. Meriwether Lewis wrote about a peculiar quality to the mountains that seemed to bend both light and time. I opened the folder. Inside were reports, photographs, maps, over a century of documentation about the ghost trail and things like it throughout the park. But one document stood out, a memo from 1986, the year before the trail was removed from maps. Project Backbone, I read aloud. A joint initiative between the National Park Service and the Department of Defense. Janet nodded. They tried to study it, tried to weaponize it. Sent a team of Army Rangers through the tunnel with full recording equipment, GPS trackers, the works. What happened? They came back aged 40 years in 40 minutes. The youngest was 19 when he went in, 59 when he came out. But their equipment showed they'd only been gone for 2 minutes. The project was shut down, the trail was removed from maps, and everyone involved was sworn to secrecy. But it didn't work. The trail still appears. No, Janet agreed. If anything, it's gotten worse since we tried to hide it. Like the mountain is angry at being ignored. She stood up, walked to the window overlooking the park. In the distance, we could see Triple Divide Peak, that unique point where water flows to 3 oceans. I'm creating a special task force, she said. Unofficial, off the books. You, Tom Crow Feather, and Dr. Rebecca Harrison from the USGS. Your job is to monitor and contain the ghost trail situation. Dr. Rebecca Harrison arrived the next week. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with the kind of intense focus you see in people who've dedicated their lives to understanding the impossible. She'd been studying what she called geological temporal interfaces for the past decade. It's not just Ptarmigan Tunnel, she said at our first meeting, spreading maps across the conference table. Look at this. The maps showed Glacier, but overlaid with something else, lines of force, energy patterns, anomalies marked in red. Ptarmigan Tunnel was the biggest, but there were dozens of smaller marks. Iceberg Lake. Hikers report losing hours there. Granite Park Chalet. The logbook has entries from dates that haven't happened yet. Sperry Glacier. Ice cores showing isotopes that shouldn't exist on Earth. The whole park is riddled with these wounds. Tom leaned forward, studying the patterns. They follow the backbone. What? Rebecca asked. The backbone of the world. What the Blackfeet call the Continental Divide through here. These anomalies, they're all along the spine of the mountains. Rebecca's eyes widened. Of course. The Continental Divide isn't just a geographical feature. It's a liminal space, a boundary. Water chooses which ocean to flow toward. It's a point of decision, of possibility. If you were going to punch a hole through reality, you'd do it at a place that's already in between. So the CCC didn't just randomly build through the wrong spot, I said. The whole divide is vulnerable. More than vulnerable, Rebecca said. She pulled out a tablet, showing seismic readings. It's active. These readings are from last week. See these patterns? They're not earthquakes, they're something else. The mountain is breathing, in and out, like a massive lung, and each breath is getting deeper. That's when my radio crackled. Emergency dispatch, all rangers respond. Another hiker had gone missing, this time in broad daylight, on one of the most popular trails in the park, the Highline Trail, the spectacular path that runs along the Continental Divide from Logan Pass. We found him 6 hours later. Robert Flanagan, a dentist from Ohio, was standing in the middle of the trail, having a conversation with someone only he could see. When we approached, he turned to us with tears streaming down his face. "She says the war is over," he said. "My daughter. She says the war is over and I can come home. But I don't have a daughter. I don't... When is this? What year is this? We checked his ID. Robert Flanagan, born 1978. But the man in front of us looked 70 years old, and in his wallet was a military ID for Corporal Robert Flanagan, U.S. Army, dated 1944. That night, Tom's grandmother called an emergency meeting with the Blackfeet Tribal Council. I was invited, a rare honor for an outsider. The council met in a traditional lodge, smoke from sweetgrass filling the air. "The old stories are clear," Mary Crowfeather said. "When the backbone breaks, the world ends. Not in fire or ice, but in confusion. Past, present, and future collapse into one, and humanity cannot survive the paradox." Chief William Running Crane, elderly but still sharp, spoke next. Our ancestors knew to avoid certain places. They marked them, warned about them, told stories to keep people away. But the whites came, built roads, cut tunnels, brought millions of visitors to trample on sacred and dangerous ground. "Is there a way to heal it?" Rebecca asked. She'd been allowed to attend as my consultant. The elders exchanged glances. Finally, Mary spoke. "There is a ceremony. It hasn't been performed in living memory. It requires a sacrifice, not of life, but of time. Someone must walk the ghost trail willingly, carry the prayers of both worlds, and choose to stay in the between, to become a guardian of the boundary." "I'll do it," I said immediately. "No," Tom said firmly. "If anyone does this, it should be me. My family has been here longer. We understand the mountain's language." "The mountain has already chosen," Mary said, looking directly at me. "It marked you the day you found the trail. You've been walking between worlds ever since without knowing it. Why do you think you can see the trail when others can't? Why do you think the disappeared speak to you?" She was right. Ever since that day in March, I'd been different. I saw things others missed, trails that shouldn't exist, people who weren't quite there, moments where time stuttered and repeated. The stone dust from the ghost trail that I'd found on my boots, it kept reappearing no matter how many times I cleaned them. "But the ceremony requires more than just the chosen one," Mary continued. "It needs anchors in both worlds, past and present. It needs someone from before the wound was made, and someone from after." "The CCC crew," Rebecca breathed. "The ones trapped in 1933, they're from before. And the tourists getting caught now, they're from after," I added. "But how do we—" My radio crackled again. But this time, the voice wasn't dispatch. It was old, tinny, like it was coming through an antique receiver. "Ranger Mitchell, this is Foreman Johnson. CCC Camp GM2. We've been waiting for your call. The boys are ready to finish what we started. Just tell us when." Everyone in the lodge heard it. The impossible transmission from 1933 reaching across 75 years like they were nothing. "How?" I asked the radio. "Time isn't a line, Ranger," Johnson's voice replied. "It's a spiral. We're not in the past. We're right next to you, just one curve over. The tunnel doesn't just go through the mountain. It goes through the spiral. We can see you from here. We can see all of it. The wound is spreading, and if it reaches both ends of the spiral..." The transmission cut to static. Chief Running Crane stood slowly. "Then we have no choice. The ceremony must be performed before the spiral completes, before past and future meet." "When?" I asked. Mary consulted something. Not a calendar, but an old hide painting covered in astronomical markings. "The autumn equinox, September 22nd. That's when the backbone is most vulnerable, but also when it can be healed. You have 6 weeks to prepare. 6 weeks to learn a ceremony that hadn't been performed in generations. 6 weeks to coordinate with voices from 1933. 6 weeks to prevent reality from collapsing. No pressure. As the meeting broke up, Rebecca pulled me aside. Dave, there's something else. The readings I've been taking, they're not just from our equipment. I've been picking up signals from other sources, military frequencies, but not current ones. They're from the future. 2045, 2078, even 2156. They're monitoring the situation, too. What are they saying? She looked scared. They're saying this is where it starts. The breakdown of linear time. In their history, their past, our future, this is recorded as the beginning of the temporal wars. If we don't seal the wound. We will, I said with more confidence than I felt. We have to. That night, I stood at Logan Pass, looking out over the dark valleys of Glacier. Somewhere out there, the ghost trail was waiting. In 6 weeks, I would walk it again, but this time I wouldn't run. This time, I would walk through the tunnel into whatever lay beyond. The mountain knew it too. I could feel it watching, waiting, breathing. The countdown to the equinox had begun. The preparation for the ceremony was unlike anything in my ranger training. Every dawn, I met with Mary Crow Feather to learn the old songs, not just their words, but their meaning, their connection to the land. The songs weren't in modern Blackfeet or even ancient Blackfeet. They were in something older, a language that predated human speech, that spoke directly to the bones of the earth. You don't sing these songs, Mary explained. You become them. Each note is a step between worlds. Each breath is a doorway. Meanwhile, Rebecca had turned the ranger station into something resembling NASA mission control. She'd brought in equipment from the USGS, from universities, even some devices that showed up in black cases with no return address. She was tracking the temporal anomalies, mapping their frequency and intensity. It's accelerating, she told me on September 1st, 3 weeks before the equinox. The ghost trail is appearing daily now, and it's not just Ptarmigan Tunnel anymore. She showed me her latest readings. The anomaly had spread. The Highline Trail was showing temporal distortions. Hidden Lake was reflecting stars from skies that didn't match any known constellation. And Grinnell Glacier was growing, returning to its 1850s size for hours at a time before shrinking back. Tom had been investigating the human cost. The disappeared were returning, but wrong. Emma Brown, the Berkeley student who'd come back as Elizabeth from 1933, had been joined by dozens of others. They were being held at a special facility in Kalispell, officially for treatment of severe dissociative disorders. But Tom had gotten inside, posing as a visiting counselor. What he found was terrifying. They're not crazy, Dave, he told me. They're displaced. Each person is 2 or 3 or more people from different times, all sharing one body. Emma Brown knows advanced glaciology from 2008, but she also knows how to build CCC camps from 1933. And she keeps talking about the war with Canada from some timeline that never happened, or hasn't happened yet. Can they be helped? That's the thing. They don't want help. They say they've seen the truth. That linear time is an illusion, that all moments exist simultaneously, and we're the ones who are limited by experiencing them in sequence. They're not suffering. They're evolved or devolved. I honestly can't tell. On September 10th, something happened that changed everything. A tour bus, 43 Japanese tourists, drove through a temporal fold on Going to the Sun Road. One moment they were there, the next they weren't. The bus was found 6 hours later, perfectly intact, but aged 50 years. The metal was rusted, the tires rotted, the seats crumbling. Inside were 43 skeletons wearing clothes that had mostly decomposed. But here's the impossible part. The tourists were also found alive, walking down the road about a mile away. They had no memory of anything unusual. To them, no time had passed. Yet carbon dating confirmed the skeletons in the bus were them, or would be them in 50 years. The Park Service went into full crisis mode. The road was closed, the media was fed a story about a chemical spill, and the entire incident was classified. But we couldn't hide the truth from ourselves anymore. The temporal anomalies weren't just affecting individuals. They were starting to affect larger groups, larger areas. Janet Morrison called an emergency meeting. "We're shutting down the park," she announced. "Full evacuation by September 20th. "That's 2 days before the equinox," I pointed out. "I know. Whatever you're planning, Dave, you'll have the park to yourself. But if it doesn't work..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. On September 15th, a week before the ceremony, I had my first real contact with the other side. I was camping near Ptarmigan Tunnel, keeping watch, when the ghost trail appeared without warning at sunset. This time, I didn't hesitate. I climbed up and walked to the tunnel entrance. Foreman Johnson was waiting for me, not his voice on a radio, but the man himself, solid as anyone I'd ever met. He was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent years doing hard labor outdoors. His 330 uniform was pristine, like it had just been issued. "Ranger Mitchell," he said, extending his hand. "Been expecting you." I shook his hand. It was warm, calloused, undeniably real. "How is this possible?" "The tunnel doesn't just connect 2 valleys," he said. "It connects every when that ever was or will be. We've been here since 1933, but we've also been here forever. Time doesn't pass for us. We pass through time." He led me into the tunnel. Inside, it was nothing like the rough-hewn passage I knew. The walls were smooth, crystalline, showing reflections of moments that hadn't happened yet or had already passed. I saw myself as a child, visiting Glacier for the first time. I saw myself as an old man I hadn't become yet, still wearing the ranger uniform. I saw versions of myself that would never exist, ones where I'd become a teacher, a soldier, a father. The CCC crew was there, all 12 of them, looking exactly as they must have in 1933. But I could also see through them to other versions, them as old men, as children, as people who'd never been born. "We didn't mean for this to happen," Johnson said. "We were just building a tunnel, following the engineer's plans. But the mountain had other ideas. The moment we broke through, connected both sides, everything changed. Past and future collapsed into now. Can it be fixed?" One of the other workers, a young man who couldn't have been more than 18, answered. "Not fixed, but balanced. The Blackfeet ceremony, we've seen it performed in other timelines. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The key is the sacrifice. Mary Crow Feather said it's not a sacrifice of life. It's not," Johnson confirmed. "It's a sacrifice of linear existence. Whoever performs the ceremony becomes like us, existing in all times simultaneously, forever maintaining the balance between what was and what will be. It's not death, but it's not life as you understand it, either. And if I don't?" They all looked at each other, and I saw fear in their eternal eyes. "Then the wound tears completely," Johnson said. "Past, present, and future collapse into a single point. Everyone who ever lived or will live experiences every moment simultaneously. The human mind can't handle that. Civilization ends not with war or disaster, but with everyone going mad from experiencing infinite existence all at once." I spent hours with them, learning about the tunnel's nature. It wasn't just a physical passage. It was a conscious entity, a living scar in reality that was trying to heal itself the only way it knew how, by bringing all times together to close the wound. When I finally left, dawn was breaking, but when I checked my watch, only an hour had passed. Tom was waiting for me at the bottom of the trail, relief evident on his face. "I thought I'd lost you," he said. "The trail appeared and disappeared 3 times while you were up there." How long was I gone? About 10 minutes. 10 minutes that had been hours. Or maybe hours that had been 10 minutes. Near the tunnel, time had no fixed meaning. On September 20th, the evacuation was complete. Glacier National Park was empty except for our small team. Me, Tom, Rebecca, Janet, and Mary Crow Feather with 3 other Blackfeet elders. We set up our base at the Many Glacier Hotel, the massive historic lodge that looked like a Swiss chalet transplanted to the Montana wilderness. That night, the aurora borealis appeared. But wrong. The lights weren't just in the sky. They were rising from the ground, flowing up the mountains like reverse waterfalls of light. Rebecca's instruments went haywire. "The boundary is breaking down," she said. "We're getting signals from hundreds of different timelines. Look at this." Her screen showed what looked like a weather radar, but instead of precipitation, it was showing time itself. Past and future were flowing toward the present like storm fronts, and they were going to collide directly over Ptarmigan Tunnel at the autumn equinox. Mary gathered us for final preparations. She painted symbols on my face and hands with ochre and ash. Not Blackfeet symbols, but the same geometric patterns I'd seen above the tunnel entrance, the ones that hurt to look at directly. "These will protect you," she said, "and mark you as the bridge between worlds. The spirits of all times will recognize you as the keeper of the boundary." But as she painted, her expression grew troubled. "There's something else. The ceremony requires a witness from the future, just as we have witnesses from the past. Someone needs to come forward from beyond the equinox." "How can someone witness something that hasn't happened yet?" Janet asked. Before anyone could answer, Rebecca's equipment erupted in alarms. A massive temporal surge was happening at Logan Pass, 15 miles away. We rushed outside to see an impossible sight. A beam of light stretching from the pass into the sky, and descending through it were 3 figures. They landed near the hotel with no parachute, no vehicle, just stepping out of the light like walking downstairs. They wore uniforms I didn't recognize, something like Park Service gear but with technology woven into the fabric. Their badges showed the NPS arrowhead, but it was surrounded by symbols that seemed to move. The leader, a woman who looked disturbingly familiar, stepped forward. "Ranger Mitchell, I'm Ranger Commander Emma Mitchell, your great-granddaughter. We're from 2087, here to witness the temporal reconciliation ceremony." I stared at her, at my descendant from a future I might never see. She had my eyes, my stubborn jaw, but there was something else in her expression. The weight of knowledge I couldn't imagine. "In our timeline," she continued, "you successfully performed the ceremony. The temporal wounds heal, but slowly, over generations. We've come to ensure it happens correctly. The future depends on it." "And if it doesn't happen correctly?" Tom asked. The 2 rangers with her exchanged glances. One of them, a young man with features that suggested both Asian and Native American heritage, answered, "Then we don't exist. None of the futures exist. There's just an eternal, maddening now where everything happens at once forever." Emma, my great-granddaughter, pulled out a device that looked like crystallized light. "This is a temporal anchor. It will help stabilize the ceremony, make sure the bridge holds. We can only stay until the moment of the equinox. After that, we return to our time, successful or not." That night, none of us slept. How could we? Tomorrow would determine whether time itself continued to function. I stood on the hotel's deck, looking at the mountains that had been my life for so long. They seemed different now, not solid, but quantum, existing in states of probability rather than certainty. Tom joined me. "You ready for this?" "No," I admitted. "How could anyone be ready to exist in all time simultaneously?" "Maybe you won't have to," he said. "Maybe there's another way." The elders were clear. The mountain chose me. Mountains can change their minds. But we both knew they didn't. Mountains were patient, inexorable. When they made a choice, it was final. September 21st came with a sunrise that shouldn't have been possible. The sun rose from 3 directions at once, east as it should, but also north and south, as if multiple Earths were overlapping. The temperature fluctuated wildly, summer heat one moment, winter cold the next. "The convergence is starting early," Rebecca announced. "All timelines are being drawn to this point." Through the day, we saw impossible things. Glaciers that had melted decades ago reappeared. Lakes that had been dammed in the 1920s flowed freely. We saw megafauna that had been extinct for 10,000 years. Dire wolves, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, passing through the valleys like ghosts becoming flesh. And the people, hundreds of them from every era of human habitation in the region. Blackfeet warriors from before European contact. Lewis and Clark's expedition. Railroad workers from the 1890s. CCC crews. Modern tourists. Future visitors in clothing made of light and sound. All walking toward Ptarmigan Tunnel, drawn by something beyond choice. "It's beautiful," Emma from 2087 said softly. "We have paintings of this in our time." The day all times were one, but seeing it. As the sun began to set on September 21st, Mary Crow Feather began the ceremony. The elders formed a circle, their voices rising in the ancient songs. The sound seemed to calm the chaos slightly, creating a bubble of stability around us. "At midnight," Mary said, "you must enter the tunnel. Walk through to the other side, but don't emerge. Stop in the center, in the place between places. That's where you'll speak the words that will either heal the wound or tear it open completely." She handed me a leather pouch. Inside was a single object, a piece of obsidian that seemed to contain stars. "This is the heart of the mountain," she said. "Carried down from the beginning of time. Place it in the center of the tunnel, speak the words I've taught you, and choose." "Choose what?" "Whether time continues as a line, allowing past and future to exist separately, or whether you embrace the spiral, where all moments exist as one. The choice must be yours, made freely, or the ceremony fails." As midnight approached, we made our way to Ptarmigan Tunnel. The ghost trail was permanently visible now, glowing with its own light. The CCC crew stood at one entrance. My descendant and her team stood at the other, and I stood at the beginning of the trail, ready to walk into eternity. The last thing I remember clearly is Tom gripping my shoulder. "Whatever you choose, brother, we're with you." Then I walked onto the ghost trail for the last time, ready to face what waited in the space between heartbeats. In the moment between was and will be. The ghost trail felt different this time. Each step I took echoed not just in the present, but rippled backward and forward through time. I could feel my footfalls landing in 1933, in 1850, in times before humans walked these mountains. I could feel them landing in 2087, in centuries not yet imagined. The tunnel entrance loomed before me, but now I could see it as it truly was, not just an archway through rock, but a mouth that breathed time itself. The symbols above it were moving, rearranging themselves into words I could suddenly read. Here ends linear thought. Here begins eternal moment. I entered. Inside, the tunnel was infinite. Not long, infinite. I could see every version of it that had ever existed or would exist. The rough-hewn CCC construction. The smooth, crystalline passage I'd glimpsed before. A natural cave from before human tools touched it. A collapsed ruin from some far future. All existing simultaneously, overlapping like double-exposed photographs. Foreman Johnson and his crew were there, but so were thousands of others. Every person who had ever walked through the tunnel existed here at once. I saw Emma Brown and her 1933 alter ego Elizabeth, now understanding they weren't two people sharing a body. They were one person experiencing two timelines simultaneously. I saw the Japanese tourists, both alive and 50 years dead, and understood that both states were equally true. In the center of the tunnel, where Mary had told me to stop, there was a sphere of absolute stillness, a place where even the chaos of colliding timelines couldn't reach. I stepped into it and felt sudden, overwhelming peace. The obsidian heart in my pouch began to glow, pulsing with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Or maybe my heartbeat was matching it. I placed it on the ground and it sank into the stone like water, spreading veins of starlight through the tunnel floor. That's when I heard the voice. Not Johnson, not the CCC crew, not any human voice. It was the mountain itself, speaking in frequencies that bypassed my ears and went straight to my bones. "You stand at the wound we made in our body," it said. "When the first tools cut through our stone, we bled time. Every tunnel, every road, every trail carved into our flesh releases what should be contained. You humans experience time as a line because we mountains hold it for you, keep it ordered, keep it sane. But you've cut too deep, taken too much. We can no longer hold the line. I understood then. The mountains weren't just rock. They were temporal anchors, massive beings that existed across all time simultaneously, creating the illusion of linear progression for smaller, shorter-lived creatures like humans. And we had been unknowingly damaging them for centuries. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Choose. Heal the wound by accepting non-linear existence, becoming like us, holding time for your species. Or seal yourself in linear time forever, but know that other wounds will open, other mountains will bleed, until eventually all collapses into eternal now." I thought of everyone I'd known. Tom, faithfully standing guard. Rebecca, trying to understand with science what was beyond science. Janet, protecting the park even from itself. Mary Crow Feather, keeping ancient knowledge alive. My great-granddaughter Emma, come from a future that might not exist. And I thought of the CCC crew, trapped for 75 years in a moment that never ended. Is that what I would become? A guardian, frozen between heartbeats? "There's a third option," I said to the mountain. "Silence. You're wounded, but wounds can heal. Not by closing them, not by leaving them open, but by teaching the body to adapt. You say humans need linear time to stay sane, but what if we could learn? What if gradually we could handle more?" The mountain considered this. I felt its ancient thoughts moving like geological processes, slow but inexorable. "Show us," it finally said. I began to speak the words Mary had taught me, but I changed them. Instead of choosing between line and spiral, I wove them together. I sang of time as a river that sometimes curves back on itself, sometimes flows straight, sometimes spreads into a delta of possibility. I sang of humans learning to swim in that river, not all at once, but over generations. The obsidian heart responded, its starlight veins spreading not just through the tunnel, but beyond. I could feel them reaching out to every temporal wound in the park, not sealing them, but transforming them. Instead of bleeding time uncontrollably, they would release it slowly, carefully, allowing humanity to gradually adapt to non-linear existence. But the ceremony demanded its sacrifice. I felt myself beginning to change. Not disappearing, not freezing, but expanding. My consciousness stretched across time, but instead of experiencing all moments at once, I could choose which to experience. I could be in 2008, fully present, then step sideways to 1933, then forward to 2087. I became a ranger not just of space, but of time. This is the sacrifice, the mountain said. Not to be trapped, but to be free in a way that requires eternal vigilance. You will guide humanity's adaptation to temporal reality. You will prevent the wounds from tearing, heal them when they bleed, teach those ready to learn. You will walk all times, but belong to none. I accepted. The change was indescribable. Imagine every memory you've ever had becoming as real and present as this moment. Imagine every possible future you might have becoming equally accessible. I was 5 years old, seeing Glacier for the first time. I was 90, teaching young rangers about temporal ecology. I was never born. I was eternal. I was all of these simultaneously, yet still fundamentally myself. When I emerged from the tunnel, though emerged isn't quite right, since I never truly left and never truly arrived, the world had changed. Or rather, the world's relationship with time had changed. The ghost trail was no longer ghost-like. It existed permanently, but safely, a designated pathway between temporal states. The park had become what Rebecca would later call a temporal education zone, where people could safely experience non-linear time in small doses, building up humanity's tolerance over generations. Tom was the first to see me, though see isn't quite right either. I existed in a state of quantum superposition, fully there and partially elsewhere simultaneously. To most people, I would appear as a shimmer, a suggestion of a person. But Tom, prepared by his heritage and his experience, saw me clearly. "Dave, is it done?" "It's begun," I said, my voice coming from multiple moments at once. "The healing will take time, ironically enough. Generations. But the wound is no longer bleeding. It's becoming something else, something useful." Emma from 2087 approached, her temporal anchor device now showing readings that made her smile. The timeline is stabilizing. Not into a single line, but into a manageable multiplicity. In our time, we call them the Glacier Revelations, the moment humanity began to truly understand time. "Will you still exist?" I asked her. "Your timeline will exist," she confirmed. "All the timelines will, but now they're connected by intention rather than accident. People can visit other timelines, learn from them, but return to their own. You've turned a wound into a doorway. The CCC crew was free, not free to return to 1933. That timeline had closed, but free to choose when to exist. Some chose to go forward, to see what humanity would become. Others chose to stay as temporal guides, helping others navigate the new reality. Foreman Johnson shook my hand one last time. 75 years is a long time to wait for a thank you, he said. But thank you, Ranger Mitchell. You found a solution we never imagined. In the days that followed, though days are a flexible concept now, Glacier National Park reopened, but with new warnings, new trails, new possibilities. The Ptarmigan Tunnel became a pilgrimage site for those seeking to understand time's true nature. Under careful supervision, People could experience an hour as a minute, or a minute as an hour. They could glimpse other timelines, other possibilities. Some couldn't handle it and never returned. Others thrived, becoming what we called temporal rangers, people who could navigate multiple timelines and help maintain the balance. The Park Service had to create an entirely new division, the Temporal Management Unit. Tom took over my old position, but more than that. He became the bridge between the traditional knowledge of the Blackfeet and the new temporal science. His grandmother Mary lived to see the ceremony's success, and she smiled when she saw what I'd become. Not what we expected, she said, but perhaps what was needed. The mountain didn't want a guardian. It wanted a teacher. Rebecca's research became the foundation of a new field, temporal ecology, the study of how time flows through landscapes and how human activity affects that flow. She discovered that Glacier wasn't unique. Every mountain range, every ancient landscape had some degree of temporal flexibility. We'd just been the first to tear it open enough to notice. Janet Morrison retired, but not before establishing protocols for temporal tourism that would become the global standard. She never quite got comfortable with my new state of existence, but she accepted it. "You're still writing reports," she said once, finding me in the ranger station that existed across 17 different time periods simultaneously. "Some things never change, even when everything else does. As for me, I exist now as something between human and mountain, between moment and eternity. I walk the ghost trail daily, though daily has no meaning when you exist across all time. I guide those who get lost between timelines. I heal temporal wounds before they become critical. I teach humanity, slowly and carefully, how to swim in the river of time without drowning. Sometimes I visit myself in the past, a shadow at the edge of vision that made me unconsciously aware of the trail years before I officially found it. Sometimes I visit possible futures, most where humanity has learned to live with temporal flexibility, some where they haven't. I work to ensure the better futures have the best chance of becoming real. The tunnel still stands. It will always stand, has always stood, never existed, existed before existence. It's a paradox that no longer needs resolving because we've learned to live with paradox. The CCC crew still builds it, eternally, but now by choice rather than compulsion. They build it in every timeline, creating infinite variations, each one teaching us something new about the nature of reality. Glacier National Park has become Earth's first temporal preserve, a place where past and future are equally protected, where extinct glaciers can still be touched in timelines where they never melted, where future glaciers that don't yet exist can be studied. It's become a beacon for temporal refugees, people displaced from their original timelines who need a place where such displacement is normal. The Blackfeet were right. This is the backbone of the world, and backbones, I've learned, aren't meant to be rigid. They're meant to flex, to adapt, to help the body move through space and time. The wound we tore in 1933 has become humanity's first vertebra of temporal awareness, the beginning of our evolution into beings who can truly comprehend the nature of existence. But there are rules. There are always rules. You can't change the past, only visit it. You can't guarantee a future, only influence its probability. You can't save everyone, but you can ensure their stories exist somewhere in the infinite branches of time. And you must never, ever forget which timeline is your origin, your home, your anchor, or you'll become lost like the CCC crew was, existing everywhere and nowhere. I still wear my ranger uniform, though it exists in a quantum state that reflects all the uniforms the Park Service has ever used or will use. I still protect the park, though now I protect it across all its temporal iterations. I still file reports, though they're written in languages that haven't been invented yet and stored in databases that exist outside conventional space-time. Sometimes, late at night, in timelines where night exists, I stand where the ghost trail used to appear only during avalanches. Now it's always there, a permanent reminder of humanity's first deliberate step into temporal consciousness. I watch the tourists, the pilgrims, the scientists, the mystics, all coming to understand that time isn't a prison or a river or a circle. It's a mountain, vast, complex, dangerous, beautiful. And we're all just learning to climb. My name is David Mitchell. I was a Glacier National Park ranger for 22 years. I still am. I haven't been born yet. I've been dead for centuries. I exist in the moment between heartbeats, in the space between thoughts, in the pause between past and future. And if you ever find yourself in Glacier, walking a trail that wasn't on your map, seeing the park as it was or will be rather than as it is, don't panic. You're not lost. You're just experiencing time as it truly is, flexible, multiplicitous, infinite. Look for the shimmer of a ranger who exists in all times and none. I'll guide you back to your timeline, or forward to a better one, or sideways to one you never imagined, because that's what rangers do. We protect, we preserve, we educate. We help people navigate dangerous terrain. It's just that now, the terrain includes time itself. Welcome to Glacier National Park, where yesterday is tomorrow, tomorrow was yesterday, and today is every day that ever was or will be. Watch your step. Time can be slippery when it's not frozen in a single direction. And remember, the mountain is always watching, always waiting, always patient. Just like time itself.